Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday morning program of the Northern Virginia Baha'i Center. We apologize, we're running a few minutes late. At this time, we would like to remind everyone that the program is being recorded. We would also invite you to enable your camera so that our speaker can see you and to create a more welcoming and warm atmosphere. At this time, we will begin with a prayer and some devotions, following which we will introduce our speaker.
O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence, they're all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty, and all are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree, and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family, and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and powerful. Thou art the forgiving, who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind.
Again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday morning program. Our speaker today is Sue St. Clair. In the 1980s, Miss St. Clair served as a community health nurse for 7 years in Liberia, West Africa, training village primary health workers through USAID. In 97 to 98, she also completed a 4-month primary village mental health worker research project in Malawi, South Africa, that represented the first such project in the country and allowed for trained village primary mental health workers to be available at the village level. Since 2006, she has been studying and practicing an energy medicine system known as Body Talk. This work has facilitated a deep understanding of the soul consciousness and the whole body-mind system down to the very cellular level. The intersectional relationship between the Baha'i writings, the study and practice of psychiatric medicine, and of Body Talk is deep and allows Sue to practice both in a much more meaningful way than she could have without the spiritual support of the Baha'i teachings. Now, Sue is bringing all of her personal, professional, spiritual, and material learning into her current work as she burrows into the study and practice of racial justice and what that has to mean for us in America. Her topic today is resilience in a time of historic portent. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Ms. Sue St. Clair.
Thank you, Sandra, and good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you this morning. The topic that I'm going to be talking about, the way in which I chose to approach it, may be a little different than how we have done in the past, but I felt it was very important, at least for me, because for me, it's a work of exploration, study, and deeper understanding of why people of African peoples and peoples of African descent are called by Baha'u'llah the pupil of the eye. So we're going to be looking at it going way back to millennials. And so I did ask if this is a venue where people are able to receive information that may for some be a little difficult to accept. And I was encouraged that you have done a lot of study along this line, and that you're ready to receive this information. So I'm going to present it. I'm going to share screen now. Oops, let me get to, okay. So we know from the Universal House of Justice, they have presented a couple of different letters in which they talked about resilience. One in which they asked us to look at the resilience of the people in Iran and how they have been able to develop that to help them to not rise above and thrive even in the context of the suffering that they're enduring, and that we should look to their example to help us with our own. And in that same letter, they also indicated that we could look to the people of African descent here in America. However, in another letter, they stated that we need to understand that what the Blacks here in America have undergone and the resilience that they have developed as a result cannot be compared to what the people in Iran have endured, because for us it has been much more deep, long-lasting, and comprehensive in the way in which our roots have been taken away from us. Our family history has been taken away from us. Our history of us as a people has been taken away from us. And so that was very heartwarming for me, because I do see the resilience that we have had to develop in this country as being something that is different, not taking anything away from what our brothers and sisters in Iran have and are suffering, but also understanding that what we have gone through here and are still going through here is something that is much more profound and much more impactful for us as a people. So, sorry, my phone is trying to ring on me. So let's go forward. I wanted to start this by saying that when Abdu'l-Baha, when first of all, Baha'u'llah talked about religion and science, one of the principles that they had to agree, I wanted to include a statement about that here because of what I'm going to be sharing. If religious beliefs and opinions are found contrary to the standards of science, they are mere superstitions and imaginations. For the antithesis of knowledge is ignorance, and the child of ignorance is superstition. So he is reinforcing for us that we are meant to understand what science is sharing with us and also to understand what our religious teachings are sharing with us, and they should match. So keeping that in mind, this picture is a reproduction of what people look like in the Paleolithic period in Africa. It's interesting that in a number of places that I was researching, they talked about that this was a period where man had evolved from the ape. But Abdu'l-Baha has told us there's no such thing that had happened. Man always, always was man. And in the Baha'i world faith, he goes even deeper and talked about even if we were swimming in the ocean, crawling on the ground, climbing in the trees, even if we were one-cell organisms, which all of that we were, and we reproduce all of that in the womb of the mother as we're developing, we still were man, separate from any other creature that was created. Abdu'l-Baha told us that we established before through rational arguments that life on this earth is very ancient, not 100,000 or 200,000 or even 1 or 2 million years old. It is ancient indeed. And we know that from scientific research that they're finding that there are examples of man as man that even science are saying that goes all the way back even more than 2 million years ago. But then Abdu'l-Baha says that man was produced 10 or 100,000 years ago. And so the two don't seem to coincide. This is my thinking now, and that is, it was approximately 100 to 200,000 years ago that the evidence from the findings of remains of man from that time, 100,000, 200,000 years ago, was when they discovered man was walking upright and was able to begin to solve problems in a different way. And Abdu'l-Baha said that man has reached the stage of physical perfection, and now he has to develop his other qualities. My thinking is that physical perfection may have been what happened 100 or 200,000 years ago. So one thing that we've found is that early humans were ingenious problem solvers. They had to be to survive because their environments were not very welcoming. They had to find ways to negotiate. And so they were very intellectual beings for their time. They developed sophisticated stone tools and technology. They underwent physical and behavioral adaptations. And all of this prepared them to migrate outside of Africa. So throughout that Paleolithic period, there was a lot of material and intellectual growth that was taking place, as well as physical development that led them to be able to develop the technologies that they needed that would allow them to challenge nature as they were getting ready for the new challenges that they would endure as they moved outside, first in other areas of Africa and then outside of Africa. I wanted to play a little bit of this video because I found it fascinating. So I'm going to let you decide for yourself.
Is probably despised by at least throughout African that hasn't really been seen on the same scale
Okay.
all men. However, the further back in history we go, we see something very interesting. Africans all across the continent have expressed a respect for women that hasn't really been seen on the same scale in other parts of the world. The matrilineal philosophy present throughout African culture seems to have afforded women various freedoms, giving them access and affirmations in places and spaces that would surprise us today. The greatest proof of this was in the Nile Valley, where women had many rights and privileges under state law, a concept that we've only recently adopted today. Anyway, contrary to popular belief, the oldest manifestation of a mathematical concept was discovered in Africa amongst the Lebombo and Ashango bones. And with one of these discoveries, according to one scholar, the needs and concerns of African women spearheaded the development of the mathematical sciences. Discovered in 1960 and dating back to around 8500 BC, the Ashango bone is one of the world's oldest mathematical tools in human history. It's kept in the Royal Institute for Natural Sciences in Belgium and can only be seen.
Sorry, I just realized that I'm not on slideshow. So I'll do this to where we
Math is probably
I think we were able to see it. It was playing for
No,
us.
I was putting it, I just wanted it to be in
Oh.
slideshow.
Okay.
natural sciences in Belgium and can only be seen by special arrangement. The Ashango bone was found in an ancient mountainside settlement near the Lake Edward region in present-day Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The bone is named after the Ashango people who inhabited the area sometime between the 7th and 10th centuries BC. Little is known of the Ashango people except that they hunted, fished, and farmed in the area before a volcanic eruption destroyed their village. It was originally considered a simple tally record, but recent microscopic analysis has revealed additional notch marks indicating that it may have been used as a lunar calendar. The bone itself has a quartz writing tool at one end, while the body is made of bone that is etched with 3 rows of notch marks, with each row having its own mathematical significance. The first row is a series of calculations based on the number 10. The second row contains prime numbers between 10 and 20, and the third is a multiplication table. The Ashango bone is an important indicator of the scientific progress in Paleolithic Africa. With the advancement of trade among societies, knowledge of mathematics and units of measure became increasingly important. Basic mathematical calculations were also used to predict the effects of drought or floods on crop yields. With the discovery of the Ashango bone, the long-held assumption that African societies were slow to develop mathematical technology was disproved. The Ashango bone is certainly important as it proves that Africans since the beginning were using the sciences to solve their problems and to enhance their lives. As amazing as the Ashango bone is, there's an even older mathematical tool that's seldom discussed. It's called the Lebombo bone, and it's believed to have been in use around 9000 BC. The significance of the Lebombo bone is that it's the oldest expression of mathematics on the planet, and it's theorized that women were its primary inventors. In the 1970s, during excavations near what is today called Border Cave in the Lebombo Mountains between South Africa and Swaziland, a small piece of the fibula of a baboon was found marked with 29 clearly defined notches. The bone, which resembles the calendar sticks still in use by the San people in Namibia today, ranks with the oldest mathematical objects known. As mentioned before, it's been suggested that since the Lebombo bone was used as a lunar phase counter, women may have been the first mathematicians, as keeping track of menstrual cycles requires a lunar calendar. The Lubombo bone bears witness to the existence of a very sophisticated accounting system which enabled humans to master time, and it is the first visible hint of the emergence of calculation in human history. Now, since one of the functions of both the Lubombo and Ishango bones are believed to have been used as lunar calendars, the agency of African women in this mathematical process seems very plausible. Regardless, the discovery of both mathematical tools just validates the idea that Africans were indeed the spark of human civilizations, especially since we see a very clear trail of culture and civilization emerging from Africans within the interior, moving further north, influencing some of the more recognizable African states in ancient times. Anyway.
So that was just an aside to help us to understand that even that long ago, 10,000 years ago in Africa, there was the earliest indications of mathematics. Just to give one example of what the early peoples of Africa were able to accomplish. So the migration of African peoples began, there's differing opinions about it. I did have a map in an earlier presentation that showed that the migration started in the 1 to 2 million years ago. But because there was a bit of controversy about when it started, I decided not to show that map. But we know at least it's been within that 100 to 200,000 years ago. One of the things that fascinated me, as well as surprised me completely, was the migration that the earliest humans in ancient China were actually Africans. And so this research, and the research that was shared with the world, was done by a Chinese geneticist. So truth, it seems today that the truth of our history, all of our histories, is starting to come to light in a very different way in these, let's say in the last 20 years or so. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I just wanted you to see this. And the first Chinese emperor was undoubtedly, and there was no argument about that, a Black African, and they have his name and when he lived. And that was a stone portrayal of him. In ancient, these are just a couple of, these are a few more representations that were made at the time of Egyptian rulers, and they also were originally Africans. The interesting thing for me is that everyone that well, not everyone, but nearly everyone that I found had their noses destroyed. And you can take from that whatever you will, but for me, it was a direct attempt and blatant to hide the fact of their true lineage. I found it interesting where this what I have on the left here during the Greek period, that there was one of the few Egyptians or any Blacks who were allowed to keep their real noses. Sumeria was the most ancient, but also the first really well-developed civilization, and it existed between the years 3500 to 2000 BC. It also existed in the same area that was Mesopotamia. Well, it's here, but also today it's called during the area around Iraq, Tigris River. The Sumerians were among the very earliest builders of a great civilization. And it went on to, because of discoveries they found in their archaeological research, they found that they were developers of writing skills. As a matter of fact, they created the first form of writing, which was called cuneiform, and engineering, medicine, architecture, religion, and so on, although they were polytheistic. And this is a map of the area that was called Sumer. And interestingly enough, the area around that they're calling Uruk and Uma, those were the areas where Abraham lived and traveled. And then just some information about its location, an example of a cuneiform script. And I'm going to go fairly quickly through the rest of this. This is a sculpture of the head of a Sumerian ruler from 2150. And just to go back a little bit, I just want to highlight a couple of more things. The ancient Blacks were called Sumerians. They were the pioneers of the development of the earliest civilization. Second, they formulated cuneiform scripts, and that script was used for over a 3,000 year period, and they were used in 15, it was used in 15 different languages. And here's all of the different peoples that were using that script, but it was originated in Sumer. Additionally, they created a mathematical system of symbols, and they were the most ancient, they had the most ancient documents on cosmology, and they also developed an astrology. They had law, they had codes of law and politics that led to social organizations in what it was called a city-state. And they emerged the idea and practice of institutions of learning. Education to them was part and parcel of life in the community or in society. I thought this was very beautiful, and it was created at that time. They had lots of clay. It was abundant in the soil, and they were able to create a great deal of pottery, terracotta sculpture, and seals and documents to prove property rights. But this ram looks very much like a ram, but it was created between 2600 and 2400 BC. And this dagger could have been created today. The beauty of it is amazing. A bill of sale in cuneiform script. I just want to read this last part here. So, as modern African historians and educators, we cannot afford focusing only in the reconstruction of Black history dating from the pre-colonial era to the present, significant as that may be. The history of Black people must begin at the dawn of human civilization. And this was written by an African researcher from the School of Education in Eastern Africa's university. I thought this was a nice saying. What became of the Black people of Sumer? The traveler asked the old man. For ancient records show that the people of Sumer were Black. What happened to them? Ah, the old man sighed. They lost their history, so they died. And still today, they don't have any definitive explanation for what caused the Sumerian civilization to disappear as such. One states that it may have been due to a 200-year history of drought. And then this is, well, I may have to go to, I was able to do it before, so why not now? Let me see if I can do it this way. This may be it. It's a different one than what I had.
This is The Negro Speaks of Rivers, one of my earliest poems written in 1920.
No, that's not it, so we'll bypass that one. No, not happening. So this is my statement about that whole time period of Black history and what happened next and where we are now. Black civilizations began a long and slow decline. By the 15th century, much of Black civilization in Africa, Egypt, and other areas was being systematically and categorically destroyed, altered, discounted, and disbelieved or attributed to any group other than Blacks, even in Black Africa. And this was done by the Arab and European conquerors. As the horrors of slavery, colonization, and genocide in Africa took root, we as Africans and people of African descent began to forget who we really are and began taking on the identity forced upon us. We developed spiritual amnesia. I do want to say something aside. I apply this more to us in America and people of African descent in other areas of the world, more than to Africans having lived in Africa. Compared to what we've endured, they're proud people, and they still know something more of who they are than what we do. However, DNA in epigenetics research is proving that we carry within us the history of our people. And so the roots of Black people goes very, very deep. And this is why, in spite of everything that we did endure, we're able to not only survive, but to thrive and to contribute to the society of the world. This is just a brief listing that I was able to come up with of some of the decline, suffering, and loss that people of African descent or people of the eye that live here in America, what we have endured, subjugation, oppression still taking place, killings every day, physical, spiritual, and emotional abuse, separation from family, culture, identity, still happening today as people are being corralled and imprisoned, sometimes without even a trial, still happening today. Forced labor, nowhere to turn for sustenance but to our God, nowhere to turn for sustenance but to our God. Stolen, raped, maimed, killed, made to believe that we're less than human. Civilizations are destroyed or appropriated. We're lied about in education, in religion, in society, in media, in books, in advertisements, in institutions, and in the legal system. Centuries of living under chattel slavery and white supremacy. How can we not but have spiritual and mental amnesia? However, in spite of all of that, we're still civilization builders, creators, innovators, inventors, artists, musicians. We still have a strong, unwavering spirituality. We still have humility before our God. We're healers. We're uniters of all that is human, not just Black people. Flexibility and adaptability, family and community-oriented, unbreakable connection with Ubuntu. I am because we are. So Black constructive resilience is the capacity to endure and survive, even to thrive under oppressive conditions, because of how we can go deep within ourselves to the roots that can't be destroyed and pull up from that spiritual space what we need. The spiritual vision to see beyond the moment, the hour, the day, the driving need to contribute to the betterment of all humanity, the heart-centered need to hold each other up and keep each other safe, both materially and spiritually, that is inclusive of all. Seeing each other as brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles, having a strong sense of justice, compassion, and mercy, community-oriented. The whole concept idea of Ubuntu is one in which that comes from African spirituality. And it means that we are all connected. We cannot be ourselves without community. Health and faith are always lived out among others. And I saw this so well expressed in the times that I spent in Africa. And we have the remnants of it right here in America within our own Black communities. When our grandma always had something ready. Somebody stopped by, come on in, sit down, fix you a plate. We still have some of that. Archbishop Desmond Tutu stated, it means you are generous, you're hospitable, you are friendly and caring and compassionate. You share what you have. So, having given a little bit of the history, taking us way back and then quickly fast forwarding us to our time, I wanted to highlight just very quickly Haji Mubarak, who was a servant of the Bab and was there in the earliest beginnings when the Bab was receiving his revelation from God. And I just found out from another gathering that I was in that a Dr. Saidi, which works in the archives at the house in the Holy Land, came across an unpublished document in which the Bab compared Mullah Haji Mubarak to his parents. And I'm happy to share that with anyone who is interested in seeing that information. When Baha'u'llah came, he came for the whole of mankind. And he came for the meek of the earth. As Jesus Christ stated, that it is the meek of the earth that will inherit it. But he came for them as well. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with this passage where he says that he has been consented to be bound with chains, that mankind may be released from its bondage, and so on. He revealed himself as the latest messenger from God. And at that time, not only did he say to all people who accepted his faith, and we call ourselves Baha'is, he said to the Baha'is, ye are the leaven that must leaven the world of being. But he said to the people of Africa and African descent, you are the people of the eye. And he gave us that special designation. So we're going to dive into that for a moment.
A gift for all humanity, seekers of the light.
Malcolm Martin Mandela, standards for the world. To make this earth a better place for every boy and girl. Beige and brown, black and white, a variety of colors. Yet one human family, all sisters and brothers. Bearing burdens from the past, enslaved and sometimes sold. Enduring untold horrors while survival was the goal. But darkness equals mystery, a search for the unknown. Seeking spirituality, we know we're not alone.
The earth's human garden we see before our eyes, representing unity if we only realize
care for flowers so none will be neglected. Humanity is much the same. We all must be respected. Pupil of the eye, the source of our vision. Teachings of a holy man who spoke to us from prison. Pupil of the eye, the Creator's gift of sight, a gift for all humanity, seekers of the light. Yes, we're seekers of the light. Seekers of the light. Well, how will
So here's what Baha'u'llah says about people of the eye. He compares the colored people to the black people of the eye surrounded by the white. In this black pupil is seen the reflection of that which is before it, and through it the light of the Spirit shineth forth. Again, thou art dark in countenance and bright in character. Thou art like unto the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world. Verily, the faces of these are as the pupil of the eye. Although the pupil is created black, yet it is the source of light. I hope God will make these black ones the glory of the white ones, and as a depository of the lights of the love of God. And I beg of God to assist them in all circumstances, that they may be encompassed with the favors of their loving Lord throughout centuries and ages. And then last, the reflection of a person is seen in the black pupil of the eye. In other words, the pupil of the eye is a mirror of social reality. It's a metaphor that helps us to understand that what we see is real, and we see with clarity. This is the gift that has been given to the black peoples of the world. Not only do we see with clarity, we're able to shine light on the way forward. And this is why Abdu'l-Baha in his Tablets of the Divine Plan said, teach the blacks, the whites will follow. Of course, we didn't do that. Shoghi Effendi followed up and said that we should teach the blacks. And now the Universal House of Justice is talking about the same thing. The reason is not because we are meant to be more special than anyone else, just that we have a different and more focused responsibility. And we've been given the gifts to be able to achieve it. Here's what Mawtul Baha Ruhiyya Khanum said. When Baha'u'llah likens the Negro race to the faculty of sight in the human body, the act of perception with all it implies, it is a pretty terrific statement. He never said this of anyone else. I thought the American Negro's humility, his kindness, friendliness, courtesy, and hospitableness were something to do with his oppression and the background of slavery. But after spending weeks, day after day in the villages of Africa, seeing literally thousands of Baha'is and non-Baha'is, I have wakened up to the fact that the American Negro has these beautiful qualities, not because he was enslaved, but because he has the characteristics of his race. So, like I said about the responsibility, I'm not going to read all of this because we do have to move forward, but he does, Shoghi Effendi is giving us great responsibilities, both for us and for the rest of mankind. We're to arise and teach. We're to help others to understand what this is all about. Now, there are ways to do it and there are ways not to do it. And we could definitely share with you what is not the best way to do it. That's another story, however. But why is this so important and why on our shoulders? Abdu'l-Baha tells us that the continent of America is in the eyes of the one true God. the land wherein the splendors of his light shall be revealed, where the mysteries of its faith shall be unveiled, where the righteous will abide and the free will assemble. I wanted to quote a researcher and a PhD candidate who happens to be white, but she has a very deep and very wide understanding of this whole issue of racism in our country. And she talks about the denial of the injustice, the white ignorance, the persistence on a wide scale of people clinging to stories that they have inherited. She said it is inseparable from white supremacy, a social, political, and economic system that we have inherited as a nation for the purposes of preserving the land, wealth, and power white men have accrued by colonizing North America. The last, racism is interlinked with that frame of thought. Racism is not just prejudice, it is race-based prejudice that is reinforced by systems of power. And this is why I, as a Black person, cannot be racist. I can be prejudiced, but I don't have the power to be racist. The Universal House of Justice talks about the need for us to look to communities of proven strength to help those in which less experience has accrued. And they go on to say, in this year-long effort talking about what's to come, every community must draw on whatever untapped potential it may possess and seek to overcome any obstacles that are impeding its growth, thereby preparing it for the demands to come. Now, I know, because I've heard people who have a white consciousness say, well, what this means is that we have to turn to communities, clusters that are now at level 3 in order to seek guidance for how we should do the work in neighborhoods and forming devotionals and doing junior youth groups. And that's all true. But it doesn't go far enough. When they talk about communities of proven strength and they talk about untapped potential, my first thought was, hey, what about the Black people in the communities who have the vision that has been given them through their long history, millennial history of experience that's centered in their DNA. So adding that to the mix, then you have a full understanding, to my thinking, of how we should look at this year-long effort. Just again, a little bit of aside, but also another example of resilience.
When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. When I am on your shoulders, you raise me up to more than I can be.
This is one more story, and it's one that's more reflective of how things are done here in the United States, and I'm sure in other countries as well, where there's white supremacy. There was a group of cadets that Lady Roosevelt, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, wanted the Navy to train as officers, 16 of them to be exact. They didn't want to do it. They didn't feel like Black men should be in those kind of position of an officer. However, the First Lady and the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Adlai Stevenson, told them that they had to do it. So they chose to do it in a way that would ensure failure. The normal training period is 16 weeks. They reduced it to 8. However, the cadets found out about this, and they decided that they were going to stay up all night and study. And when they were tested, the entire group passed with high marks. The people who were in the chain of command were shocked. They couldn't believe that these black cadets could get scores that were even higher than the white ones. So they made them take it again. They passed again. And yet, they only chose 13 out of the 16, 12 as commissioned officers and 1 as a warrant officer. And they called them the Golden 13. This is Shoghi Effendi talking about the American society. And he's quoting Abdu'l-Baha. No less serious is the stress and strain imposed on the fabric of American society through the fundamental and persistent neglect by the governed and governors alike of the supreme, the inescapable and urgent duty of remedying, while there is yet time, through a revolutionary change in the concept and attitude of the average white American toward his Black fellow citizen, a situation which, if allowed to drift, will, in the words of Abdu'l-Baha, cause the streets of American cities to run with blood. Do you think we're there yet? The House of Justice, in a number of its messages, shared with us its perception of the kind of racism that exists in America. And I strongly urge everyone to look up these words so that you get a fuller understanding of what they're talking about. Baneful, cancerous affliction, patent evil, transmuted into forms that are multifaceted, less blatant and more intricate. So it's becoming more hidden, but still having the same effect. And thus more intractable, meaning very difficult, if not impossible, to change. Of course, we know Baha'u'llah has it. He's got this. Just how long it will take is up to us. They refer to the long and thorny road that Shoghi Effendi talked about. They call it a pernicious blight on American society. Abdu'l-Baha talked about dire warnings, like when he said the streets will run with blood. Shoghi Effendi gave a trenchant analysis. In their 2018 message, they called it a devastating ferocity. They talked about it in their July 2022 message, that there would be countervailing processes, overt or covert, meaning whatever we do, they're going to find a way to get around it, go over it, go under it, or find a way to go right through it to keep things as they are. And they'll do whatever it takes. Forces of oppression, a profound deviation from the standard of true morality. But then you have to ask yourself, the American government, the American Constitution, the development of this country was all based on racism. So do we really know what true morality looks like? Sadie Oglesby was an African-American woman that was able to go on pilgrimage and meet with the Guardian. He asked her a lot of questions about the situation of Black Baha'is in the United States back in 1927. I believe it was 27. And as a part of their conversation, he told her when she goes back, she must be very bold, very forceful in dealing with this issue, because if not, things were going to get worse. Sadie Oglesby said, and this is what made me go back in time. At this time, the oldest race represented upon the earth is the colored race, while the youngest or last to have attained a high civilization is the white race. And in order to close this cycle and save the civilization of this day, the oldest and youngest, or first and last, outer ends of the cycle must link together. Then the inner or intermediate races will take their places. Thus, the family of Baha'u'llah will be established. Shoghi Effendi's response, that is true, but if we fail to do this, we will be dispersed. Now, I do want to say it is Pilgrim's Notes, but I'd also want to add to that when Sadie Oglesby came back, because she was charged by the Guardian to make sure to express his wishes to the Baha'is when she came back. So she gave this presentation at the National Convention of 1927 in Montreal. And at that time it was Canada and America. And the delegates at the convention were so taken in a positive way by what she said that they decided, that the National Spiritual Assembly decided to send this to every community, Baha'i community in Canada and America. And because of that, her Pilgrim's Notes are considered to be, I can't remember the exact word, but they're considered to be acceptable for our use. So with a long history of having built civilizations, done arts and sciences and math and so on, but also of having suffered both in Africa and here. Out of that suffering, this is Khalil Gibran, we can take this to our own hearts. Emerges strong souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. Another quote from Rahia Khanum, where she says that Shoghi Effendi says that the majority of the human race was not white, and that the majority of Baha'is would not be white in the future. As up until very recently, the Baha'is of the world were almost exclusively white, it is only natural that their virtues and their faults should have colored the faith and its community life. It is illogical to suppose that what we have now is either mature or right. It is a phase in the development of the cause. When peoples of different races are incorporated in the worldwide community and in local communities, who can doubt that it will possess far greater power and perfection and be something quite different from what we have now? And yet, let us ask ourselves frankly, if we do not believe that what we North American Baha'is have is the real thing, practically a finished product, and it is up to the rest of the world to accept it. I think this is our mentality. It was mine up until a few years ago. I'm going to bypass this. So as we take into our system, to whatever degree we are able to do everything that was said up to now, we have to look at the work that we are doing and that we are required to continue to do. And so I wanted us to look at the community building process from the point of view of what the House of Justice has asked of us, that we should, one, form true and effective relationships, that we should become real friends, listen to the members of the community regarding their own needs, ensure that they become the real protagonists of their community service, encourage their own creativity, thought, imagination, consultation, independent investigation, stay as much as possible in the background, but help them as they figure it out, and make sure to have fun and enthusiasm in the process. And then this is a question: are you encouraging authentic conversations around racism and how it is impacting their community? If you're white or Persian, spend even more time listening. And last, it's so important to center Blackness in the work. The millennial genetic experience has something to share. In our devotionals, racism needs to be a part of it. In our junior youth groups, racial justice needs to be a part of it. In our children's classes, we need to incorporate racial justice at their level. Social action and discourse in society, which we tend to forget is part of the 5-year plan. We need to form relationships and collaborative, cooperative relationships with people, with organizations that are effectively addressing aspects of racism. They can teach us a lot. What does twofold moral purpose look like in all these spaces? And how are you centering people of the eye or people of African descent in the decision-making and the planning? And this is what I would like for us, if we have time, to talk about these questions regarding social action, regarding what we're doing in incorporating racism and racial justice in our activities, in whether we're encouraging authentic conversations around racism as we are making decisions to go into communities of color or communities of African descent. And what does twofold moral purpose look like as we're doing this? How are you centering people of the eye and people of African descent in the decision-making and planning? These are all the martyrs, and I'm sorry, that's what I'm calling them, to the cause. And there's so many more since I found this one. I actually found one that had a whole bunch more, and then I couldn't find it again to replace this one. As soon as I find it again, I will replace it with that one. But then it'll become obsolete because every day, so many more are being killed by police. And I'd like to close by saying, please let us pray for one another.
Thank you very much for that incredible talk. I think that's one of the most interesting talks we've had recently. At this time, you are unable to unmute yourself and ask questions. You can raise your hand, I believe, in the participant box, or you can type a question in the chat box if you don't want to ask the question yourself, and I will read your question. But yes, okay, Roya Ramhimpur has raised her hand. So Roya, would you like to go ahead and ask your question? Make sure you unmute yourself. Roya, you're still muted. Okay, Barbara Talley, would you like to unmute yourself and go ahead while we're trying to get Roya's situation worked out? Everyone should be able to lower their hands. Oh, okay, Barbara, can you speak now?
Okay, because before I was getting an error that says the host is
okay.
allowing you to unmute.
Okay, and then after Barbara, Roya will come back to you.
Yes, thank you, Sue. I'm always inspired to hear this presentation and what you've added to it. And I'd like to point the attention to one of the slides you had of the Guardian and Sadie Oglesby's dialogue, in which he says, we will be dispersed, and then the conditions for that. And he said that the oldest race on the planet, the Black, and the youngest, the white, that if these two at the ends of the spectrum reach out to each other, everyone in the middle will adjust themselves. And with that, so many people, as you tried to point out and did such a good job with, is that as Black people are calling ourselves the pupils of the eye because Baha'u'llah has given this rootless people an identity, a banner under which we can unite and find people that have had similar experiences, similar oppressions, similar successes. And sometimes in doing this, others are saying, well, what about me? Don't Persian lives matter? Don't white lives matter in our Baha'i faith? And I'd like to say that, I guess it's more of a comment, that those in the middle, and especially those that are the beautiful expressions of both groups, you're in a better position. And there are many people say, well, I'm not white and I'm not Black. Well, then you're somewhere in the middle. And if you're somewhere in the middle, then you have a better opportunity to reach your hands to the right and to the left and help bring those who are at the farthest fringes together. It's all of our fight. It's all of our responsibility. It's all of our duty. And it has to be attempted. We're saying do everything with a strand of love. And love is more than just words. If you love somebody, you take care of what you say you care about. It has to go beyond lip service. And we know the Guardian said also in the advent of the divine justice. And he said, the need of the cause in America is the call of the heart. The call of the heart. It's not words, it's not facts, it's not all your knowledge, your degrees and all that kind of stuff that is going to do what we need to do. The need of the cause in America is the call of the heart that can be given no one. You can't take a test and get this one. You can't make enough money and get this one. The need of the cause in America is the call of the heart that can be given no one, save those who have suffered and been trained in the road of sacrifice and humility. So if you're in the middle, and we're talking about the pupil of the eye, and you think some people might be trying to get a little bit more centered or a little bit too uppity, rethink that thought. Because this, he says, we desire to show favor to those who've been brought low in the land and to make them spiritual leaders among men and to make of them our heirs. This is the great reversal. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. This is divine prophecy in action. So thank you, Sue, for the wonderful presentation and that slide. Every time I see that, he says, if you don't do this, we will be dispersed. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Barbara. Always wise words from her.
Okay, Roya, I think you should be able to unmute yourself now and ask your question. Are you able to? I was unable to unmute Barbara, but I don't know, Ismail, is there a way you can unmute her as the host or?
Hello, do you hear me?
Oh, okay, yeah, we hear you.
Oh, hello, hi, thank you. Aloha everyone. I had difficulty unmute myself a few times. I had to disconnect and connect to make it work. Lovely talk. I appreciate the speaker. Wonderful talk and very timely. I love that. Just wanted to explain my own feeling and the question I had for the speaker. When I was from Iran after the revolution and decided that, oh, it's no place to live here anymore, we don't have any rights. And as you may know recently, that after many times they took away the cemetery of Baha'is, now they are making it much harder, making Baha'is to have fight over land to be buried with the other groups. This was talked on the international level yesterday. I heard that. But I remember when we were discussing with the family and with my sisters and brothers, should we leave or should we stay? And we were discussing, well, if you stay, you are facing the religious discrimination. And if you go, you are facing racial discrimination. Now pick up your choice. Which one do you like? Which one is harder? Which one is more difficult to deal with? And then at the end, we decided, okay, we had lived for generations with this religious discrimination. We know what it is. And we developed some skills, but maybe we should try the other discrimination. So we came with understanding that this racial discrimination, even though for the Blacks is the highest and the worst, because they cannot just color their hair and become a part of the society. Their skin will say. So for Iranians, many of them, they suffered the discrimination, and just by dyeing their hair, they were able to blend in. But it just shows the pain. That's all it shows. And I just wanted to basically value the resistance of the Black people, that of course all of us, we are living on each other's shoulders, generation by generation, race by race, doesn't matter, but we are all one. And if we do accept that, we know that we have learned from each other. As Baha'u'llah says, if you just listen to the land, if the land had the tongue to tell the stories of how many civilizations they came and left and they destroyed each other as based on savage behavior, that we came all through that and we left that, hopefully. The point I wanted to make is that even though we suffered, all of us, but we have to support each other to get to that level of humanity that we all want to. In one way, yes, we heard that Baha'u'llah or Abdul Baha is saying the pupil of the eyes, and for native Indians, another beautiful name, and for Iranian different, and for the European different name, romantic visualization of the status of humanity. It should not make us feel different. And that brings me up like the Black Lives Matter. What does it say? What does it mean, this sentence? Does it mean Black Lives Matters means the others are animals and they are not human, and others' life doesn't matter? Isn't it nicer if we say human life matters, no matter what color, what race? Doesn't it make us more united? And therefore, I just wanted to bring this to attention and ask the speaker's opinion that being a Baha'i, being educated in this way of level of understanding, do you think is that a better choice, or just saying human life matters? Because as soon as the superiority happens, then all the doors of help is closed, and that's the human psychology. So it's better for all of us to say we are in one human family. We have to be in one. Separation does not matter and is not able to separate us, because that has been the way that the power-seeking people or savages of the old, they want to rule on us by separating us. One is black, one is white, one is brown, one is gray, one is in the middle, and 50 shade of gray. So just wanted to ask that question from the speaker. What do you think about this title, Black Lives Matter? Thank you.
I don't really know how to respond to Roya in a way that is meaningful. Other than to say, I would love it if you would do some studying of not only the messages from Baha'u'llah and Shoghi Effendi and the Universal House of Justice, but also some study of the history of Black and white.
I've done it.
Excuse me, you spoke, it's my turn. There is such a thing as being unconsciously not being able to understand what is going on in this world, especially in this country. And I'm sorry, but there's so much of what you said, Roya, that I find very difficult to deal with. I think it's better that I not say anything more. I would like for anyone else that would like to say something to please do so. I will say this, there are two things that struck me the most of everything. One was choosing racism over religious discrimination. Racism is against Blacks. What someone that comes here from another country experiences is the kind of prejudice that has to do with either religion or nationality or culture, which is a different form of prejudice. And if you study the messages of the Universal House of Justice, when they talk about racism, they're talking about what is experienced, and all those terms that I share, it has to do with what has been happening against Black people in this country. And when we say Black Lives Matter, we're saying, stop killing us, we are human beings too. Dilute it however anyone chooses, dissimulate it however someone chooses, but Black Lives Matter. And that's all I want to say about that. Anyone else have anything to share?
I'd like to just jump in for a minute with my idea. I've been a Baha'i for 28 years, and when I look back on my experience of being a Baha'i, it was 4 Black women who held my hand and taught me about the faith and were there every Sunday at the DC Baha'i Center to greet me. And throughout my experience as a Baha'i, I've always felt welcomed by African American Baha'is. And I know this is a terrible thing to say, and I'm married to a Persian, but I've never felt included by the Persian Baha'is. Also, something I was thinking when you were showing the slide of Ruhia Khanum's talk on racism. I don't know what year that talk was, but when she was talking about, we think that the model we have of the Baha'i faith in America is what it's going to be. I personally think right now, the model, the Baha'i model we have right now, at least in Northern Virginia, is sort of a train wreck. I'm gonna stop and look at the chat questions for a second here. Bill Winters asks about if the presentation can be made available to the community. This will be made available on the Nova Baha'i Center website. You need to scroll down near to the bottom of the main page, and it is usually posted sometime on Wednesday, if everything goes according to schedule. As Vandiar has said, since humanity started by people moving from Africa and populating the whole world, does it not mean we are all from Black origin? Someone else replies, yes, we are all descendants of the African Eve, according to all branches of science. Once again, there's a comment, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter. The history we have just reviewed shows that Black lives are not considered in the same way as others, so we cannot achieve true oneness until this is changed. And yes, Ismail has posted the link to the Nova Baha'i Center in the chat, so you can use that to get to the talk. And now I'm going to try to go through the raised hands in the order I think I saw them pop up. Perry, would you like to speak?
Sandra, did you call me?
Yes. I'm trying to call on the raised hands in the
you.
order I think I saw them pop up there.
I just wanted to make sure I heard my name. Thank you. I wanted to honor Sue's request to have others respond to what was just shared. And I think this is such an important point that we kind of once and for all begin to understand and share. Also, as a Persian Baha'i who's been raised mostly in North America, when we say, or when the nation says Black Lives Matter, the very purpose and reason of focusing on a particular race is because it is defined by a system that does not take into consideration this race. When we deny the opportunity to understand that there is a system that this system actually is founded and defines the non-existence of Black lives, as the Guardian and as the writings say, that it is an erasing of history, it is a depriving of one's human dignity of existence. And if we don't emphasize the existence of not only these lives, but make them the very focus in honoring that it is the pupil of our eye, that the very focus of everything we do has to do with that pupil, then we are denying the existence of all lives. You have to look at it from the complete opposite paradigm. All lives cannot matter when this life does not matter. We have to really begin to shift our vision and our scope to see opposite to what we may have experienced on our own, and begin to see and understand, listening as if you're listening in that existence of what is happening, because we are missing the opportunity to elevate and unite the world, as you said, and as has been said, because of this denial. We have all not gained the bounty of the people of the I community, of the indigenous community, of all oppressed communities, because we have denied this existence of their gifts to us, and vice versa. We have denied any opportunity for this unity to exist. I wanted to say this in the spirit that when we also hear these marvelous, majestic passages in the faith and all of the spiritual manifestations of God that speak to us about love and, truth and the power of words. Words are powerful because they clothe it with meaning. They clothe it with insight. And we have to be so careful about the language, the words that we use, because they have to be eloquent, they have to be elevated, and they must practice fair-mindedness and justice and light. And I wanted to thank Sue because this was truly a most enlightening, beautiful program, and I think we didn't even do it justice in this 1 hour, and I hope that you will come back and share more and more so that we can really learn about the true history that we have all missed, because it's the truth of that history that is allowing us not to see. It's been hidden for too long, and we must now investigate the truth and be focused only on that truth. And I would urge every member here today to really only be careful of when we say all lives matter, what we are in fact saying is that no lives matter. We must stay focused on the justice of what we're trying to say. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Sandra.
May I just say something real quick?
Of course.
Aria, I so honor you. I love your heart and your spirit. And thank you so much for saying what, being so triggered, I could not say. I wish I could see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sue. My apologies for being off camera. I am here in spirit and see you.
I think the next person in line is Emmanuel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sue, for your presentation, especially as a historical background. I think it's eye-opening for many people. And I was struck by what you said about amnesia, spiritual and mental amnesia. And I could not help to make the connection with the experience of women who have been raped. I think it's very similar. I mean, per what I have known a few women who have been raped when they were kids or teenagers, and it's exactly what happens. They are in a state of total amnesia, mentally, spiritually, and when they get out of that amnesia, it's so traumatic. It's unbelievably traumatic. And I think it's just what's happening with the Black community. And it's very, per my experience, it's very difficult to get over that trauma. Whatever you can do, whatever I mean, good feeling, help you can provide. It's extremely difficult to get over it. I have also a number of Black friends who are successful in this society, and I can feel and can see in some of their actions how much trauma and anger they still have. And I'm thinking, well, I understand you have a long experience in healing. I'm wondering if you had the experience to deal with the healing of women who have been raped, and how that might have been successful or not successful. Maybe because I mean, I have not met a woman who has been raped so far who really could successfully go over that trauma. So I'm wondering if we have the example of some forms of healing for women who have been raped. Maybe we can apply that form of healing within the Black community, because it seems there is so much similarity. So I'm wondering if in your healing professional background, you had that experience to work with women who have been raped, and how it was successful, and how maybe we can apply what you did with those women to the Black community. I think that might be helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Emmanuel, you are correct. And often I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and I see a lot of that. And they come to me with what's called PTSD, or post-traumatic syndrome. There are ways to help them, and they do heal. It requires, again, community. It requires having someone who truly loves and cares for you and supports you and walks with you and helps you to see yourself differently than the way you do see yourself. That's a whole nother kind of presentation that would require more information than just that. Also, there's a lot of, like I do body talk, but there's a lot of different kinds of energy medicine that can help people to heal fairly quickly. Social workers and psychologists use, in the psychiatric world, they use what's called EMDR, which is a rapid eye movement form of getting in touch with the trauma and being able to heal it. But there's more to it than that. And it's the same thing with, you have to heal the spirit. And so when I address anything with any clients, or even in the Black community, it's the spirit that's so harmed, and that has to be healed. And when that's healed, the rest of the system can also heal. But there's more to it than that. That's just like that's like throwing a Band-Aid over what needs to be talked about regarding that. But thank you for raising that.
Okay, next we have Barbara Talley. Barbara, are you there? Oh.
Yeah, I thought Huda was before me, but.
Oh, okay. I'm going, if you'd like to let Hoda go first, I'm just going by a list the host has sent, but
okay,
we'll get to everyone, so.
Okay. All right. Okay, I have several things. And first of all, I want, I'm not a lost for words, but when he threw the rape thing in there, that kind of, that was very, very, very triggering. You're right, Sue, that needs to be a whole conversation. What I will say about that, though, is you don't know who among you has been raped. The mere saying the word rape can be triggering, especially in a space that's not safe. I'll leave that for something else, because you don't know the people here on this screen. There are people right on this screen that have been through rapes, or have been raped, and I don't know if you can heal that totally, but people can survive, and they can perform and do things. And people, when they're in a safe space, maybe they'll share the lessons they've learned to do that. In that mode, I wanted to first start with how in the advent of divine justice, the garden said, every community, every organized community enlisted under the banner of Baha'u'llah should feel it to be its first and inescapable obligation to nurture, encourage, and safeguard every minority belonging to any faith, race, class, or nation within it. So just looking at this space right here today, and we have, so we can see who the minorities are in this space. And Sue came and shared such a wonderful program to educate those who don't have the education, who should have it, but don't. And I saw the energy, because I work with Sue quite a bit as we did the Pupil of the Eye conferences. So we would talk every day, so I know her. And so I saw the joy and excitement at sharing this gift she has with this community. I saw just as easily the light go out of her eyes. I saw her heart being hurt. So my first thing is, when you ask people to come to this space to educate you, be careful what you say. Ask yourself before you say something, because you're used to saying stuff, is what I'm going to say, especially for the minority. We're talking about race right now. You can throw class and some of the others in it also. But is what I'm going to say going to make her feel nurtured, encouraged, or safe? I can tell you that when you say things like all lives matter, that doesn't make any of us, feel safe. I want to share a couple things, if I may, because I've been thinking here, and I'm going to share my screen if I'm allowed to first deal with the first point. That's where Sue said, I don't even know where to start. But this whole thing about, don't all lives matter? There was here's a guy named Jared that put this on his page back in June of one year. He says, if you are a Christian, substitute Baha'i. If you're a Baha'i and you hear hashtag Black Lives Matter without feeling the need to respond with a criticism, you might think you're complimenting, that all lives matter, then crack open your Bible and hit up Luke 15. Don't have it handy? Let me summarize. There are 100 sheep, but one goes missing. And dear friend, one of our, Sue showed you that picture of the martyrs. One of us goes missing every single day. So there's 100 sheep, but one goes missing. Jesus leaves the 99 and goes after the one. The 99 say, but what about us? Don't we matter? Of course, the 99 still matter, but they're not the ones in danger. The one is. I'll say it again, hashtag Black Lives Matter. So that was the first point, in a spirit of helping people to perhaps see what they don't see. The next thing that I'd like to share is another message from The Guardian, talking to Sadie Oglesby about race. And he said, in the first part of the Sadie Oglesby, because she's sitting there writing her notes as The Guardian talks to her. And he says, when everybody kept talking about other things, and he would say, that does not matter, that does not matter. He says, in this great hour of turmoil, now we're in a great hour of turmoil. That was, back in 1927, But we're still in that great hour of turmoil. In this great hour of turmoil, when everybody and everything and every group of people are talking about universal brotherhood and justice, we Baha'is must be that center that is not living in the realm of thinking about it, but the ones who actually have it in practice. He laid so much emphasis on this. At the table, we intended to talk about this, but someone would talk of something else, and he would say, that is not vital. And then he would go back to this subject. Every country has its problem, and America's vital problem today is the colored problem. He asked me if we had teachings on that, and if we read them, and I said yes, they read them. Then he asked, do the American Baha'is realize the vital need of this? And I said, Shoghi Effendi, I am afraid not. I think the Baha'is of America love Shoghi Effendi very much. And when they feel the desire, the depth of his desire along this great line, they will carry out his desire. When I said that to him, I felt it was true. Here is one thing he said: nobody can solve anyone else's problem. You know, he goes on to say that every committee should have, because of that fact, every committee should have someone, at least colored Baha'i, even though you may have to use one over and over again because you do not know the colored man's problem. You may think you do because you've had a similar oppression. He said, study the needs of the cause, and you will know that the need of the cause is that the Negro be represented, and that he might express his viewpoint, that you might understand his position, that we might reach across this chasm and study it and know the needs. He said, don't go at it blindly. You know, but this whole letter, you know, is about this whole thing where he's saying that in the eyes of God, it is paramount that Black people enter the cause. And so when everyone, you know, changes the, or begins to say things like, you know, all lives matter, so we can focus on this thing. The Guardian says, if we don't do this, blood will run in the street. If you don't do this, we will be dispersed. And so finally, I'd like to say that, you know, Abdul Baha has always talked to us about, you know, the importance of focusing. Because in that letter, he's saying, you must focus on this one thing. I mean, literally, they would talk about problems in different countries, and he would say, that is not vital in the eyes. He said, because you don't have many Black people, you might not, in your community, you may not think it's vital. But he says clearly, in the eyes of God, it is vital. One final thing I'd like to share, and this is Abdul Baha saying, O daughter of the kingdom, thy letter hath come, and its contents make clear the fact that thou hast directed all thy thoughts towards acquiring light from the realms of mystery. So long as the thoughts of an individual are scattered, he will achieve no results. But if his thinking be concentrated on a single point, wonderful will be the fruits thereof. So, dear friends, yes, all of our lives can matter, but Black lives are in danger. And so we can't, and because we have so little energy and we're easily distracted, we have to focus on this one thing. It was urgent in 1927. We're beyond that right now. Thank you for sharing. And finally, this is my final, but when you invite a person of color, a pupil of the eye, make sure the space is safe for them. Even though you want to say something to make yourself seem smart or whatever, and I got you and I know this, don't wound us in your spaces. I can tell you so many people, 80% of over 350 something people that I interviewed before the Pupil of the Eye conference said they knew of a Black person that had left the faith. So I leave you with this question. Look at your own community right now. Are we there? And if we're not there, ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. Be honest. Look at your own community right now. Are we there, and are our voices heard, and can you handle the truth? Then tell us how much our lives matter. I'll close there.
Thank you, Barbara. And I'm wondering if you could perhaps in the chat box post the link to that letter by Miss Oglesby and any of the other things you shared. So anyone who wants to go back and review them can do that. Sue, did you want to respond to anything Barbara said, or shall we go on to the next person?
Oh, we can go on. I think she shared it well. I don't need to say anything more.
Okay, I believe Hoda, you're the next in line.
Yes, I want to thank Sue for an excellent presentation. I am so grateful to you for the history, the information that you shared. You really, because what the narrative of America is filled with anti-Blackness narrative. It's a distorted history of America that every immigrant American, such as me, myself, that comes over here, if I don't investigate the truth, if I don't know the real history, not just of post-colonial Africa, but the great civilization of pre-colonial Africa, all its contributions, then I will be also mired in the depths of ignorance, which will propel me to continue to exercise language, behavior, thought, which is not becoming of a Baha'i who's been taught to investigate reality and know truth. And thank you so much for your presentation. And also want to thank Barbara very much for adding, I think you spoke for all of us women in this group right now as well, when you refer to the many things that trigger us. I wanted to share because our friend earlier had said, she referred to that she's from Iran. I'm also from Iran. And I want to express, you know, how many times my friend, I think her name was Miss Rahimpour, I can't remember, but I've been in so many spaces where other Iranians are, not Baha'is. And often I've brought up the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. And many times I've heard the Iranians say, why are you just talking about the lives of Baha'is that matter? All Persians' lives, all Iranians are suffering under the yoke of the Islamic Republic. I understood why in America, where we are living right now, it matters. Black lives matter because their lives are in danger every single day, as there were ancestors, their ancestors themselves and their descendants. Because when we say all lives matter and Black lives matter is like saying completely washing out, for example, the persecution, the institutionalized persecution of Baha'is in Iran in terms of getting the birth certificate, a death certificate, a marriage certificate. Every single thing is institutionalized, and racism in America is institutionalized, from our housing to our healthcare to our educational system, and yes, in our criminal justice systems. There's two criminal justice systems, one for whites and one for Blacks. And when we say, because often we don't know, we're Baha'is, we love the oneness of humanity. We believe in the oneness of humanity, but we are not treated as one in America. And this is what is highlighted by saying Black Lives Matter, because their lives are stigmatized, they're marginalized, they're discriminated against. And we know that as as immigrants that come over here. And that when we say, no, all lives matter, it's just the same like saying, oh, all people in Iran are persecuted. But we know that Baha'is specifically their lives are in danger. Once I understood it from that level, I made that connection. And I just appreciate the fact that we have this space, that we can share this, because when we do say all lives matter, we don't sound too different to those white supremacists or those who insist that we have a colorblind, racism-free society. No, we don't. Thank you.
Okay, Payman, would you like to quickly ask your question?
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't letting me unmute. I wanted to first thank you, Sue and Barbara, and many times we have speakers here that we listen to, and it helps us. It touches our brain, but there are not that many speakers that come, and it touches our hearts and really makes us think deeply about these issues. And unfortunately, we know that racial prejudice is due to ignorance. And we're so lucky as Baha'is to have these places where we come and we learn. And we have to do so much more to educate ourselves and to, as you mentioned, in our Baha'i communities, have forums to come and make sure all of us are learning. Because as you can see, we have so many Baha'is in this area, and let's see how, we're only a handful in this forum that we're learning and educating ourselves. And it is so wonderful when you present these realities and truths for us to learn, because and when you showed that you called those martyrs, the slide that you showed, I think that's just a real handful, because the real injustice and the real martyrs are all the youth and all the African-American society over the hundreds of years that have been marginalized. Even if whenever they tried to make something themselves, they were bombed, their cities were destroyed. Whenever the projects, suddenly that real estate became like a better real estate, they try to empty them. Their schools have always been substandard. They've never been given the opportunity to be the same as other races. Even foreigners who come here, because their color is not black, their skin, they're given opportunities that African Americans have not been given. And we can try to say we understand, but we can never realize and never understand. And when we say things that out of ignorance, and it triggers such things in others, it's unfortunately out of ignorance, because we don't know and we haven't studied. And I think that is what we don't realize, because we don't have to deal with it every day. We have a privileged life, and I don't necessarily say everyone is, but when we live in a society where every day these are the messages that are sent to us, when we open the news, when we don't even know what kind of messages are being thrown at us that are really brainwashing us little by little without us even knowing. And of course, if you open some news, of course they're going to say, well, what about all the other lives that matter and all this stuff? Because they haven't sat and listened to Sue or Barbara Talley or others, because probably most of their other friends are white, and they do not realize what is going on. They don't really try to walk in someone else's shoes. And unfortunately, that's the issue that we're facing in this society, is that we don't really take the time to educate ourselves, and we stay ignorant. Thank you very much again for coming, and we really hope, as Paria mentioned, that you all come back, and this is a really great forum, and we should really invite our friends to come and learn with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Payman. Well said. It's funny. It's interesting that we ended up. I mean, it's been a very rich conversation, but we haven't answered the questions. And so I don't know if we have even time to do that, but the questions are still hanging out there. So maybe in your community, you may decide to, I don't know, what is the time like, Sandra?
We are half an hour over right now, and I have been asked to speak to another thing in the chat. I believe we can go as long as you're willing to stay and talk, with the understanding that some people may need to leave.
Uh-huh.
And of course, we would be very happy to have you back to keep addressing this issue. And anytime you're available, we are always looking for speakers. And I hope you heard that too, Barbara. We're always looking for speakers. Right quickly, somebody had asked me to address, there was a private comment in the chat that this should be a safe place to get education and get answers to our questions that may be more harmful if asked in other venues. And it said safe space, who is it safe for and why do they not feel safe with our truth? And I don't know exactly how to address this, except to say that it's very hard to change. It's hard to change your worldview of things. And the House of Justice has asked us to study history, to study it in depth. I was a history major, so that there are a lot of things that I'm hearing about now that aren't really new to me, but they're new to a lot of people. There is an excellent class on African American history by, I believe it's a Yale professor. It was addressed in one of our earlier talks and it's free on YouTube. But I think when we're addressing this topic of racial prejudice and racism, if we're not African American, if we're not Black, we really need to think twice about what we're saying. Try very hard to see it from the other person's viewpoint. Maybe research it a little bit ahead of time. There is a ton of stuff on the internet addressing the issue of why Black Lives Matter. And we need to do the hard work to get outside of our own heads and see things from other people's perspective. It goes on here, why does their safety trump our safety and why our pain is negotiable? Why does our truth cause pain in the process of educating? And what makes people feel unsafe? I can't really think fast enough on my feet to completely address that, but I would just like to say it's hard work and you need to talk to people, become friends with people outside your own little group, get to know people and just spread out from your insular community of people who are just like you, because you know, like I said earlier, if it weren't for 4 African American women in DC 28 years ago, I probably would have never come back to the Baha'i Center a second time. And if my first experience with Baha'is had been in Loudoun County, I'm pretty sure I'd be a Presbyterian. So,
Dear Sandra,
I'd like to say something regarding that question. You know, we have so much information that's coming out now. If a person doesn't have the inclination to study the history of Blacks and whites in this country and slavery and what Blacks have done in spite of everything, if they don't want to do that or don't have the, like you said, ignorance, don't have the recognition that, oh, this is something that I can do, they can study the messages from the Universal House of Justice. They can study the advent of divine justice from the Guardian. They can study what Abdu'l-Baha and Baha'u'llah have said. I mean, this is our faith. This is what our faith is telling us. And if that causes problems or issues, then it requires, you know, that twofold moral purpose that unfortunately we didn't get a chance to get to. It's working on your own heart, the first hidden word, possess a pure, kindly, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. What does that look like? How do I have a pure, kindly, and radiant heart? How does it express itself in how I engage with other peoples, especially people who are not like me? What is it that I say that reflects a pure, kindly, and radiant heart? And what is it that I say that causes people to feel bad or to feel harmed? These are all questions that we are meant to ask ourselves. And if we do the first book in the series of the Ruhi courses, there is quote after quote after quote that has to do with our own personal transformation. And if we just do that, that will take us a long way. And the Universal House of Justice, more than they ever have in the past, is sending out letters. That letter from July 22nd, and then the letters of November 25th and December 3rd, these are powerful letters. The letter from 2018, when they were supporting the work, the letters that were coming out by the National Spiritual Assembly about racism, powerful letters. If we study those letters, if we look at the words and digest those words, look them up if we don't know what their meaning is, and try to absorb what the House of Justice is saying to us, that will take us a long way to being able to discuss in a space like this that's safe for everybody. Because we'll have a better, different understanding based upon just the words of the House of Justice about what this is all about. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Sue. We are way over, so we're going to have our closing prayer at this time. And then if Sue is willing to stay, perhaps we can address there's some more people with their hands up. But Ismail's running our AV today, and I know he's a very busy man, so he may need to leave. So yeah, if we could go ahead and do our closing prayer, and then we can continue with anyone who wants to stay. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you at our program next week. It is the same Zoom link. And now I believe we can